So it turned out we were both in the moment where other people were kind of offering to join, and both of us were thinking, we haven't really talked about that, and we don't think the other person will like that, so we're going to turn them down. And then we learned later that actually both of us would probably have been okay with it.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 164. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with Mark and Lea. We're super excited to get this interview out here. They've been together about 20 years, and they actually met at a nudist camp.
Yeah, during a bird watching tour.
Yeah, right.
Mark's a birder.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's fantastic discussion. It's kind of a toned down, really I guess just a calm entrance into non-monogamy. And I think it's a really great one for people who are maybe anxious about this, who think it has to be this crazy wild ride. And for them, it's just been kind of very mellow. And so it's a really fun conversation, and we hope you enjoy it.
Yes. Before we jump into the show, we do have a couple of quick announcements.
Oh, sorry. One thing. I did want to make a quick note about the audio on this one.
Oh, yeah.
They were basically fostering 9 dogs.
Yes, a lot of puppies.
So there is a little bit of dog noise. It gets better about halfway through when they feed the dogs. So yeah, just be aware there is some dog noise. We understand, but there was nothing we could do. And they were cute dogs, so it's fine.
Yeah, they're puppies. You can't get mad at puppies.
You can get mad at them, but there's no point.
Okay, announcements. First up, last week, our episode was with Jeff, and he is the director of the upcoming documentary Romantic Chorus, and that's coming out next weekend. That's the 29th, 30th, and 31st of January. And on that 31st, the Sunday night at 6 p.m., we're hosting a live Q&A with the team of Romantic Chorus, and you can join for free and come chat with all of us.
Yeah, there are links in the show notes on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You can get to those by clicking the link in your podcast player as well. Mm-hmm. So we're excited about that. And yeah, definitely go check out that interview from last week. It's a great conversation with Jeff. And we're excited about the film as well.
Yes.
We also wanted to mention a project that we launched last Friday. So if you want to go check out, it's called Power of Witness. It's a group coaching with Catherine from Expansive Connection. She's been on the show numerous times. She's a licensed counselor. And this is like a 6-part series. And the first 2 came out last Friday, and the next one will be out this coming Friday. So definitely check those out. And if you want to be a part of the group coaching, the actual Power of Witness cohorts that she's running, there are links in the show notes as well of how you can sign up to take part in that. Yeah,
she has upcoming courses coming up in February, so go and check those out now. This whole experience was super powerful for us, and we hope it is for you as well. Also, if you want to listen to all of the Power of Witness episodes right now, you can go join our Patreon, and you can listen to them, download them today. They're available.
Yeah, if you're not sure what Patreon is, we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the outro. But what Emma said is super important, that you can listen to all of them without waiting the next 5 weeks. And a quick shout out to our current Patreon members. First of all, thank you so much for your support of the show. We love all of you, and we're excited to have you in the community. The Q&A, the monthly Q&A that we do, the discussion that we do, is tonight, January 20th. There are 2 of them, one at 6 p.m. Eastern and one again at 6 p.m. Pacific. You can join either or both, or neither, I guess, if you don't want to. I don't know why. Why wouldn't you want to? So anyway, that's coming up tonight. And we also have...
Also, you said the time's wrong. It's 9 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, that's what I meant. 9 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Pacific. Listen to me now, not listen to me 30 seconds ago.
And last but not least, we did have our monthly virtual meet and greet last Saturday. It was awesome. We did a middle of the day event, and we actually had a lot more people than we thought that were going to sign up. So we had around 40 people, and it was fantastic. Our next virtual meet and greet is going to be on February 20th. You can find out more about that by going to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and clicking on the meet and greet tab. And we will talk more about that all in future episodes.
Yeah, those are $10 to join, and they're open to anybody. That is totally separate from Patreon. So just wanted to make that clear.
Yep.
And I think with that, we'll jump into the interview with Mark and Lea, and we will see you all on the other side. Welcome, Lea and Mark, to the show. We're super excited to have you here, and your 10 dogs are in the room, so we might have a guest appearance from one of them.
They're fostering some puppies.
Puppies, so you might hear puppies in the background, but it'll be adorable, and that's totally fine with us. So, do you mind introducing yourselves for us and for the listeners so we can learn a little bit about who Lea and Mark are, and then we'll dive into your story.
Okay, well, I'm Lea. We live in the Midwest. I'm a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm Mark, and we live in the Midwest. We're in our upper 40s. One of us is almost not going to be in our upper 40s soon, but that's a secret.
Aging backward into your mid 40s?
Right.
Exactly. I'm the same way with my 30s. I'm still in my late 20s, actually.
No, solidly out of that.
29 and 48 months.
How long have the two of you been together?
About 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, congratulations.
Since 1998.
Wow.
Awesome.
And in terms of your non-monogamy journey, when did that start, or how did that start?
So there are kind of several stages that were spread widely apart. So the first stage kind of comes down to where we met. Mm-hmm. And so we actually first met at a nudist camp. And I don't know if you've ever been to this kind of place, but there are nudist camps that are like family nudist camps.
Yep.
Really, in this case, there's a kind of reservoir outside of town, like a small reservoir on private land outside of town. People would bring their tents and really just mellow people hanging out, going swimming in the lake and hanging out on the beach. And there are kids running around, and it's just the same as pretty much any other beach except for just no swimsuits. Anyway, right. So we both met there. Actually, we both started going there independently, and I can say, and probably not many people will say this, is that the first time I saw her, she was taking her clothes off. Because she had just walked in and was getting ready to sit down at the beach.
Yeah. And typically with these environments, right, where there's families and kids, these aren't like sexual environments, right? These are just, we're here, we're all just here to play volleyball, swim in the lake and relax. Yeah. And we just do that without clothes on. So there's not typically an air of sexual tension, in the environment.
No, there's really not. In fact, it's kind of based on the German, what is it called? I don't have a good German accent because I don't speak German, but it's FKK, which is for Freikörperkultur.
Okay.
Um,
And that's the German name for the philosophy that basically says, it's healthy to be nude in nature.
Okay. Very cool.
It's good for your health. Get some fresh air. Get some sun on you. Get some exercise. Right. It's basically a sort of it's like a personal health philosophy.
Okay. And so you met there.
Yeah. Was this your first time going to one of those places, or had you both been going there regularly?
Well, Mark had been going there for a while when he was doing his grad work, and he would stop there on his way back from doing his whatever field work it was, and I live not too far away from there, or I grew up not too far away from there, so I would visit just about every weekend. And so from my standpoint, I was the one that would like stay up late and with everybody that was drinking and going around. And I kept hearing these people talk about this, this guy. And I'd never met him, but in my mind, I was picturing this, middle-aged guy who, was very, who's very knowledgeable and worldly and everything. And everybody kept saying, "Oh, you got to go on these bird walks with him."
Because I would wake up early and lead people. I bring my binoculars. You got to go bird watching with binoculars, and I just lead people around the lake on a tour, and so we do just do nature observations, and look for birds and things like that. And we'd wake up early, and then she would sleep in.
Yeah, I would sleep in. But so I had pictured this middle-aged man, and when I finally met him, here was this 25-year-old grad student. Thought, okay.
He wasn't what you were expecting.
No, not at all. And there was basically time went on, and there was we had a mutual friend, and we were talking about dating and whatever. And this friend turns to me and says, "Well, hey, how about him?" Oh, okay.
So we had actually been friends for a while before that happened. Yeah, and you started it.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
preying on the young bird watcher.
So we were so that was in a different state than we live now, and we kept going there for several years while we lived there. But again, that was not a sexually charged environment, and we were totally monogamous. Although there were rumors of things happening inside tents. But it was all pretty under wraps. Anyway, so I kind of say going to a nude beach in a certain way is like a gateway drug, but in other ways, not really. So the way that it is kind of like a gateway drug is it at least gets you used to the idea of being around other people with your clothes off, right? But it's not exactly the same thing, right? If it's not a sexually charged environment. So while it actually took us a number of years to kind of transition to doing other things, then I still kind of think about that as a first step in a way, like along a long journey.
Right. Well, it let you both know that the other person was at least open to being in an environment where people weren't wearing clothes, right? And I think for a lot of people that have never done anything like this, even that is a huge, no way would I ever go somewhere where I would get naked in front of somebody. So I think that is valid that's sort of a first step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've come across people who, in the lifestyle that have even said, I couldn't do that. Well, why not?
Yeah.
No, for sure. It's interesting. Yeah, they're okay maybe being in a group sex situation with a whole bunch of other people, but to just walk around a beach naked is like, no way, not me.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you might be looking at one of those people right now. So, so how did what was the transition like, or the sort of the introduction to that side of it?
Yeah. Well, you go ahead.
Fast forward a few years. So by this time he was out of grad school. We were both out of grad school, and we were sitting there in the parking lot of Home Depot, and he turns to me and says, "Hey, well, what do you think about swinging?" And I looked at him like, "Huh, what?"
Just out of the blue?
Yeah.
Well, I need to tell you kind of where this came from, the way I like to introduce this is the way we got started in non-monogamy or swinging. It actually has to do with Star Trek and the former president of the United States.
Okay, we got to hear this story now.
we got to hear this. Well, okay. So I originally, we're going back a number of years, so I was paying attention to the news, and there was a Senate race going on in Illinois, and the leading candidate for the Senate race ended up dropping out of that race because it turned out that this guy's name was Ryan, and his wife's name was Jerry Ryan, who's an actress who was on Star Trek some years back, and he ended up dropping out of the Senate race because they were getting divorced. And it became public that he had gotten her to go to a sex club in Europe. And apparently she didn't really want to. And he kind of dragged her along anyways. And I don't think they actually did much of anything when they were there, but she was still resentful of being dragged along to this. And here's the President of the United States part. After this candidate dropped out of the race, the guy who won was named Barack Obama and later became the president, kind of a number of years later. But in any case, so that kind of gave me the idea that, hey, there are such places, right? There is such a place as a sex club. And then I thought, hey, that sounds interesting. I'd had kind of voyeurism fantasies. I'd had voyeurism fantasies for a really long time. And I thought, okay, well, voyeurism, okay, we've been going to nude beaches for a long time. Would she be up for checking one out? And we wouldn't necessarily have to do anything with anybody, but just from like a voyeurism standpoint. What if we
checking out a sex club versus a nude beach?
Yeah. And so she was, and I kind of thought she might go for it because you're kind of adventurous. And she was surprised, but she said, okay. And within the next week or two, we went to the club that was on the other side of town.
Yeah. So we went to the club and just kind of looked around, and we were both kind of scared, like, okay, what is this? And we didn't end up playing with anybody there that night. We just with each other, and thought, okay, yeah, that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I just want to remind people, like, about how long into your relationship was this?
This was about 5 years later.
Okay.
And when that first night you decided to go, like, that was a pretty fast, like, from Home Depot to sex club, like a week that's a pretty fast ramp up. Were either of you scared or nervous that first night?
Oh yeah, I was.
So what was that like? Take us through maybe that first night going there.
It was like going, it was more anxiety producing than going to a party where you don't know anybody. It's like, okay, what am I going to see here? Are there going to be creeps? Are there going to be perverts?
And we're not really club people in general anyways. Remember the waking up early and going birdwatching part?
Right.
Anyway, so we're not really club people to start off with. So it's kind of not our natural environment, definitely not to meet people. So yeah, and obviously we weren't going to know anybody. It was going to be dark. We obviously figured it would be some kind of a sexually charged environment. But yeah, we just didn't know exactly what it would be like. It wasn't much like the nude beach.
No.
Yeah. Did you end up talking to anybody even?
We talked to a few people.
Not very many, though.
Yeah, not very.
Not very many. We mostly kept to ourselves and just kind of watched.
Yeah. But it obviously didn't turn you off. It was just more like intriguing that night.
Yeah. And so we went to another club a couple of weeks later, and then by that time we ended up having our son, and so that kind of got put on the back burner for 5 years.
Yeah, well, so just so you know, we ended up adopting a baby a few weeks after that, and so
that's a lot of big life changes, right? All at the same time.
It was Home Depot, sex club, adopt a baby.
And
Okay.
we would have gone, and we've been trying to arrange the adoption for several years at this point. And it just happened that that's when it happened, right? And so then at that point we had a newborn baby, and those kind of adventures just went completely out the window. And then about a year later, then we moved away from there because I got a new job. And we moved halfway across the country to here where we are now. And because we had fun at those couple of parties, when we got here, I got on the site and looked to see if there are any clubs like that. And there aren't, actually. It turns out, I learned later, that our state laws effectively prohibit there being any permanent clubs. Okay. So there are the hotel type parties that are for, like a night that people rent out a part of a hotel. There are things like that, but there aren't any of the kind of permanent clubs like the ones we had been to before. And so, because remember, we when we went to those parties, it wasn't our plan to try to meet anybody, right?
Right.
We were just checking it out, and I learned that there weren't any clubs like that, and I just forgot about the idea then, because there just didn't seem to be the thing that we were interested in.
Right.
So we forgot about the idea for like 7 years.
Okay, so not by now, so that first experience of going to that club those 2 nights, that there was a gap of like 12 years then before anything else.
About 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, there's a gap.
Oh, okay.
So from when we met to then, it was like 5 years, and then from then until we did anything else, it was another 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And so then, how did it come back up at that point?
Well, we'd go on vacation every summer, and it turned out that we had a babysitter in his parents, so we could so we'd go off for a weekend, and and Mark looked for places to go when where we were going on vacation, and so we went to a couple more clubs and started going to house parties and stuff, and started getting a little bit more adventurous each time. And
so we would, so we had the opportunity to do something fun. Again, I think we literally went something like 6 or 7 years before we had a chance to be away overnight from our son.
Right.
And so, and until he was about 7, really. And so as she said, when we were on vacation, we had family babysitters because our family members don't live here where we live now. The idea came back from like, hey, 7 years ago, that was kind of fun. Why don't we try doing that again? Mm-hmm. And it was in another part of the country, but we looked up a similar kind of place, and we went. It was fun. And then like half a year later, we had another chance like that, and we went again, and it was fun. And that time we said to ourselves, maybe this time we'll try talking to people.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the sort of catalyst for we've been going and we're just kind of doing the voyeur or exhibition piece of it, and now it's time to maybe talk to some people, or maybe we're interested in playing or interacting with other people. How did that transition come along?
Well, about the 3rd or 4th time we had gone to a club like this while we were on vacation, we had kind of told each other ahead of time, we'd had fun these other times. We have the whiny dog here. So we had fun those other times. However, one of the reasons why we thought we could have had more fun is we actually hadn't talked to people enough. We thought it would be more fun if we were more interactive rather than just kind of hanging out by ourselves. So we told each other this time that what would be really cool if we met some people and just hung out and talked with them and kind of got to know them, and then like ended up on a bed next to them later. So we weren't really planning on doing anything more than that, but just the experience of kind of having the people on the bed next to you were kind of people we knew already. That sounded like it would make the experience more fun for us.
And in that experience, we had, some other people wanted to join in, and I was being kind of hesitant because I wasn't sure how he was going to react. So I didn't. So I kind of said no to the other person that wanted to join in. But later he said, we were talking about it, and he said, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have minded." Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so it kind of starts those conversations.
Right. So it turned out we were both in the moment where other people were kind of offering to join, and both of us were thinking, we haven't really talked about that, and we don't think the other person will like that, so we're going to turn them down. And then we learned later that actually both of us would probably have been okay with it.
So that was your first communication mishap, and it was a pretty minor one, though. So I think it's okay.
It wasn't a bad one, no.
Yeah.
And so in any case, after that experience, we were like, both this was really fun, and we had just learned that we would have each have been willing to do a little bit more. So we thought, okay, well, we'd really like to have that experience like that again, but we didn't want to wait another 8 months until we went on vacation again. So we're like, okay, if we want to do something like this where we live, there aren't any clubs like this. I guess we have to get on a site and make a profile. Mm-hmm. So that's really the way the thought process went, is if we wanted to have an experience like that, then, well, we got to try meeting somebody outside of a party.
So you decided to create a dating profile.
So you're on dating sites now. So when you do this, I guess, how does that progress? And what does that look like? Was the plan still just like, let's find people that we can get together with and maybe sit or lay on the same bed and have some fun next to each other? Or had you decided like, maybe we want to go further than that?
Well, we kind of started off with a whole long set of rules that, okay, yeah, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that.
So the answer was, when we set up the profile, we decided, we're going to go a little further.
Yeah.
But we're not going to go all the way. So we decided we're going to look for people and have a kind of soft swap situation. And so that's what we posted on our profile. We took pictures of each other. That was kind of fun. Mm-hmm. And we posted the profile. We then, like she said, of course, like lots of people, we had lots of rules and things that we were going to do. And then a lot of those didn't last very long.
No.
Like the first rule that went away was we were going to look at profiles together. And then that lasted about 30 seconds until we realized that having one of us watch the other person surf the internet was going to cause us to kill each other. So
we've been there.
So we almost immediately gave up on looking at profiles together. The pattern emerged after not very long is that I actually liked looking at the profiles more than she did. Mm-hmm. And you really, really like meeting people in person.
Yeah.
But you're less excited about the process of kind of trying to meet people who are strangers to start off with through the profiles.
Yeah, the vetting process is not as fun as the let's just go get a dang drink and meet these people and see what they're like.
Exactly.
Right. So, and then remember, at this point, we had a 7 or 8 year old kid, and it was difficult for us to get out. We had to hire babysitters and do planning. So as a result, and I think this was actually good for us, it forced us to be good at evaluating the profiles. Yeah, so we avoided, in retrospect, a number of common mistakes because meeting people on short notice was completely out of the question.
Right. So you had to talk a little bit and get to know them a little bit and make plans.
We had to talk to them make plans. And because we had to talk to them for a while, we couldn't just jump out and meet them immediately. That meant that we had to actually get to know them at least a little bit before we set up the meeting. And that gave us a much higher chance of liking them when we actually met. And it also turned out that at least I was much better at communicating by like text messages and and IMs than I thought I would. So like years ago, I would have told you that was something that I was terrible at. And it turned out actually I'm pretty good at meeting people that way. And then I come across online and I'm just pretty good at writing. And so that kind of comes through if you're chatting with me or texting with me. I actually think a number of times since then that based on our ages, if text messaging had existed when I was a teenager, my social life as a teenager might possibly have been more interesting. But
Fair enough.
But yeah, so we had to really kind of sort through people on the profiles, and we didn't meet anybody right away. We had to kind of talk to them for a while, and that mostly worked out pretty well. So we had some nice experiences. We met one couple, and then we liked them, and then we had a second date with them, which was a play date. And then another month after that, we met another couple, and the second couple, they were total newbies, and we had one date. So we felt like we were really, really experienced at that point.
Yeah. Well, really quick, backing up. So you went on you had your first experience with another couple. Now, how was that? Like, what was that like going into that night in terms of like emotions and anticipation and everything?
Well, I can't speak for Mark, but I think I was nervous, but I was also excited. To say, yeah, this could be fun.
Yeah,
and we did. I had a good time.
I was excited too. I had to really wrap my mind around the idea that we were talking about casual sex, basically, is that we had, we'd had exchanged G-rated photos with these folks, and I can remember at one point before we met them, looking at the picture of the other couple, and looking at the woman in the couple and thinking, oh, she's interested in meeting me. And that felt kind of different and interesting, right? But then I said, hey, wait a minute, but she doesn't know me at all. And I had to kind of wrap my mind around that, yes, we're going to have dinner with these folks. We're going to get to know each other. But we weren't going to get to know each other for years and years. And that was kind of fundamentally a casual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right. And on the flip side, like you were interested in meeting her and you didn't know her either, right? So you kind of had to like flip that on yourself and say, well, the same thing she wants is the same thing that we want, which is just it's an interesting sort of thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they were an experienced couple, which was really good. Actually, it was really nice that they were an experienced couple because in retrospect, there was an aspect of it that could have gone terribly. So we first met them for dinner, and then a couple of weeks later, we were going to have a second date. It was going to be a play date. And remember, we had a small kid at the time. And so we had hired a teenage babysitter. And we went out for kind of a late dinner and came back to our place. And then you had to drive the babysitter home. Mm-hmm. And we were at this point it was like 11 o'clock at night, and we were really, really counting on our kid to be asleep. And then he wasn't asleep. And so so she had to drive the babysitter home, and then I had to try to get the kid to go to bed. And the poor couple was sitting on our living room by themselves, waiting for us to get that stuff taken care of. And they were really cool and patient about it. Mm-hmm. That was super awkward. And then she came back, and and our son was asleep. And we were then still nervous and didn't know what to do. So we then sat around the dining room table for a really long time chit-chatting. And we didn't know, like, okay, well, at some point we're going to go upstairs, but we don't know how to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then eventually we did. And as soon as we got upstairs, then everything was great.
Yeah.
It's that transition sometimes.
Yeah.
And we, of course, never done that transition. So that was weird and awkward. But again, then when we got upstairs, everything was cool.
Yeah. So maybe take us to like what does your dynamic look like today, years later? And then maybe like
piece it together.
How did we get here? Because I think it's super fascinating to hear like the early, like, your first time going and then your first time having like this couple over and like the fact that your kid wasn't asleep. Like those are things that I think other people listening are like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that if they've never done this before. But
it's also relatable because we're all human and those things happen.
And that literally happened to us on one of our very first experiences, except we were the couple waiting. And rather than the wife taking the babysitter home and the husband putting the kid to bed, it was wife tries to put the kid to bed and husband drinks a 12-pack of beer and then blacks out. So it's a slightly different story with a slightly different ending. But nevertheless, we can say that is a relatable story.
It is.
So where is it today? We'd love to hear that part.
Well, so today we're still pretty active in the lifestyle, and we have hall passes, and so he has his friends that he plays with, and I have my friends that I play with, and we'll set it up. Oh, hey, so and so wants to get together. Oh, okay, and it gives us a chance to kind of do things on our own, and while one of us still kind of stays at home and keeps things going at home.
So we've kind of. So I always like to think of there being a spectrum of non-monogamy, right? There's a spectrum from kind of pure swinger, totally anonymous things at a club. You never even meet their name or see them again. The other end of the spectrum is kind of extreme polyamory where you all move in together and like share a house, right? Well, so we started out on the swinger end, but we've kind of expanded over time. So we kind of occupy, depending on what week or month it is, we occupy different parts of that spectrum. So yeah, she says we have hall passes. The way that manifests is we've definitely found that it works best for us if we have a mixture of meeting people together and also meeting people separately. Like there's a balance there that is kind of important for us. Remember back when we started meeting people, we had a small child. He was pretty much of a handful, and we couldn't get out together very much. And so one of the ideas of trying this out was it was an excuse for us to go out together and do something fun. And it actually ended up making us a lot happier. Like the fact that we had fun adventures that we could look forward to having together versus just kind of staying home and one of us always had to stay home because of our son. It's like, hey, well, this is fun enough. We're going to splurge and hire babysitters and go out and do stuff. Anyway, so we started out doing everything basically together. But a couple of years later, we met more people who had similar constraints. And we met more people who had similar constraints. And we ended up doing things both together and separately. But the things we did separately were mostly with people that we met together.
Yeah.
And that pretty much has continued today.
Well, and the thing that we found too is that one of us may be more attracted to one of the other couple than the other. So
yeah, there's not always a perfect four-way synergy as they say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really amazing that your trajectory has gone from nude beaches, going to sex clubs, having some like voyeuristic experiences, partnered, and then sort of just opening up yourselves to all of the opportunities and what those sort of may bring for you.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like we both like a lot of the same things, but we also get some different things out of it each, I think.
Yeah, like what?
Well, so in my case, and again, this is something that I would not have guessed when I was younger, or even kind of when we started all of this. But I really enjoy the kind of texting and chatting part of keeping up with people over time. And I enjoy having people that I talk to on a, daily or every few days basis and keep up with my life. And sometimes we're having life issues. And, sometimes you guys have undoubtedly had an experience kind of like this. If you guys are having some problem in your life, you're working it out with each other. But there's a point where you're like, I keep talking about the same thing with the same person. And I really want to try talking about this with somebody else. And I've learned, and looking back at my life, I was always much more comfortable talking with women about things like that rather than guys. So girls and women, back to when I was a teenager, and my best friends were girls when I was a kid. And so when you're monogamous and you're an adult married guy, you're kind of not allowed to have women that you share stuff like that with. So a kind of emotional support became really a kind of key thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how about on your side, Lea?
Well, it's kind of the same thing. It's nice to get a fresh perspective from a male's point of view from time to time, and I like the variety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. And it's fun flirting and things like that too.
Kind of building on that a little bit, how have you seen the other person grow throughout this experience?
Well, I think Mark has definitely gotten a lot more outgoing than what he was previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's true. My teenaged or 20-year-old self would be absolutely shocked.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mark? What have you seen in Lea that's sort of grown over the years?
Is really her attitude towards her own body, I say, and her kind of ability to accept pleasure physically. So this might sound funny since we've met at a nude beach. And you might think, okay, well, you're kind of all the way there to being accepting and like really feeling open about your body if you go to a nude beach. And there's an extent to which that's true. Mm-hmm. But it actually really, really gave you a lot of confidence to find out that, hey, there are other people that are interested in her and found her attractive and are pursuing her to different degrees. And that just gives her a huge amount of confidence, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
That's amazing.
I totally hear what you're saying. It's really great. There's
a part to which you're married to somebody and there's a corner of your brain that says they kind of have to say these things to you.
Right.
They kind of have to compliment to you. But if other people do that, then it's kind of an extra bonus.
That's why every once in a while when Emma asks me if she looks fat in those jeans, I say yes, just to keep her on her toes.
You're going to get some hate mail for
I know,
that.
I don't really do that. It was a joke. But nevertheless, have either of you had any struggles that you've had to sort of work through over the last few years exploring this together?
I would say one of the things that I've struggled with has been the kind of rejection piece, that when I feel something towards somebody else and they don't necessarily feel that back, that's still kind of the same feeling as when you're being, get rejected by a by a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, and it's weird too, right? Because you're like, well, why do I care? I'm married to somebody. I don't. But but you're like, it's still like, it doesn't matter. That rejection is rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been together for 20 plus years, and I still wouldn't think of anybody other than this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you maybe learned or worked through some of that? Because I think that's something that we all have dealt with, either as a couple or individuals.
Well, that's definitely one of the things that I talked to Mark about, and and talk it through with him, and I have some other girlfriends that are in the lifestyle that I'll also talk it through with too.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm kind of bummed about this.
Yeah, it helps to put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice too to hear somebody else say like, hey, you know what? It's not you. They're totally crazy. You're amazing. Like it's good then to get that sort of affirmation back of like,
oh yeah,
don't let it get you down. That's just one person, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I think so. I guess I've learned over time that I'm just not a jealous person at all. So that's not really something I feel like I can take credit for. I mean, we're sitting down here and you can't see me, but I'm a tall guy. And I can't take credit for being a tall guy. It's just kind of how I came, right? And it's the same thing for just not feeling jealous, is that I just don't feel jealous very much at all. I'm happy when she gets to have fun. And if she's meeting somebody who's new and is excited and talking with them, I think that's really cool and it's fun. And she's happy and excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't seem to have a lot of personal experiences with jealousy. Envy occasionally, right? Envy is where it's not a case of I don't want you to be doing that, but it's I want to be doing that too. I have that once in a while, but that's not usually a problem because when I say I want to do that too, then she always says yes.
Well, get in here then.
Yeah, so you just got to speak up.
Right. But I guess, so actually the thing that I have a little bit of problem with is when you feel like you're not getting enough attention. And you feel like you're struggling a little bit. So I said earlier, I'm pretty good at meeting people by messages and texts and things like that. And you have a little bit of a harder time putting yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
And so because I end up just by her choice mostly, end up doing most of the trying to meet people on sites, well, naturally, if I'm doing that, I'm going to be targeting people that I'm interested in. I'm definitely looking for people that she's interested in too. But there's more likely to be scenarios where I'm interested in, and maybe I'm not sure if she'd be interested, but we find out later that she's not.
Yeah.
And so I just try to encourage you to be more active that way. More recently, when we've done more of the hall pass kind of thing, we're on some Facebook groups where people meet each other as individuals more than as pairs. And so I'm kind of trying to encourage you to meet more people that way, where she's meeting somebody as her, not as somebody who's her and me. And I try to say in times like that, if she meets somebody that way and is interested and say wants to meet in person and wants me to come along, that's cool, and I'll totally come along. But if you don't want to, then that doesn't have to happen either.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and thank you for bringing that up, because I think it was something I kind of forgot about was the disparity between the two of you and your interest in doing the hunt. Right,
yeah.
And if you're going to pursue this individually, it's tough. You know, having done something similar, right? Or even when we look for people as couples, I'm like looking at people and I'm like, well, he's a good looking guy. And then I show her and she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what you like then. So you need to get in here and do some work yourself because I have no idea what the hell I'm looking for. So I think
for me, it helps so much to meet the person too. It's hard. It's hard for me to tell just like from a profile. I mean, I can make a guess, sure, but like it's much easier for me to connect with someone just like in person rather than just trying to pick a profile.
And that's where the messaging comes in handy because both of us have developed a pretty good feel for if we're going to mesh with somebody, through by talking with them, because there have been a number of times where we've talked to people and I've just gotten this bad vibe about it, so it's like no thanks.
Well, or also it's really. And I know different people are more comfortable communicating in different ways, but we really take the approach of, okay, if you can't hold a conversation from us messaging back and forth, there's probably not going to be much of a conversation in person. And that's not guaranteed. We've actually met, there have been a couple of people that we've then met at parties later, and we found out that we actually got along in person. But for the most part, that kind of strategy has worked pretty well for us. Mm-hmm. And you hear people. We've had a few really awkward experiences, but we haven't had a lot of the nightmare scenarios that you hear from a lot of people. And I think it's because we've developed effective methods of kind of sorting people in the stages before you actually meet in person.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So somebody who texts us and say, "Hey, want to meet up tonight?" No.
Right. Yeah. No, that's valid.
How open, I guess, with people in your lives are you about your non-monogamous journey?
I would say we're in the middle of being.
Yeah, medium. So one thing that's happened over time is most of the friends we do things with are also in those groups. So remember, we said earlier that we started this when we really felt kind of confined at home because of parenthood, right? And so we kind of developed whole friend groups over time. Mm-hmm. And so really most of our friends are doing different versions of the same kind of thing. As far as family members, our family members don't live nearby, and her parents are deceased. And so we've mostly just not told them this stuff.
Yeah.
My family wouldn't be surprised. They'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that figures."
Well, and like you said, your friend over the years, your friend group has just naturally shifted to being more of these type of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we set out to also make friends, not just play buddies or whatever.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah, but so my parents would be very shocked and probably wouldn't approve. My brother, who also lives in a different state, I'm pretty sure he'd be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? You be you. But
right.
But yeah, so we haven't really told our relatives. But again, our friends around here are mostly in that kind of group, anyways. And we've told some other friends, right? Mm-hmm. We've told some other friends. In fact, I just kind of had one of those experiences this week. Is that an old friend of mine who I met 10 years ago here in town, and she's later moved. She's moved and she lives in a different part of the state now. But we were both participating in the same Facebook group. And I replied to a post, and the post was about non-monogamy, and I replied to that post. And then my friend messaged me with a message that kind of made it sound like she knew what I was talking about, right? And And so I had kind of guessed this. But so my next message was, hey, by the way, we have a non-monogamous relationship. And she says, yeah, well, so do I.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
So people kind of, we kind of learn about people that way a little bit. But
Right. Yeah.
One of the questions we kind of like to wrap up with sometimes, because it's fun and lighthearted. And you said you haven't had any of the horror stories, but you said there's been some awkward moments, and maybe sharing like one of those awkward moments, or maybe a blooper that you've had along the way that might be entertaining as a way to sort of kind of wrap it up.
There's been so many.
Perfect. You're allowed to share more than one. It's not a strict limit.
Well, I don't. What are you thinking of?
So the one that comes to mind for me, and this was like the first year we were meeting people, so we'd only had a few experiences. I started talking to a couple over profiles, and because I'm mostly doing the chatting at that point. And I'm mostly looking for women. She's mostly looking for guys. It really helps if it's the lady on the other end, right? Okay, so I got chatting with the wife of this couple. And we seemed to be having fun chatting. They were one of these couples whom they had one picture in their profile, and it was kind of dark, and they were really far away in the picture. So we chatted, and then eventually we met. They actually came and stayed over. They came and rented a room in our town, and we went to dinner with them. And when we got to dinner, the wife of this couple looked absolutely nothing like the picture, and the picture was difficult to see in the first place.
It was like 15 or 20 years old.
Right. So we had dinner with them, and she would not shut up. She would not let her husband talk, basically. She just talked this sort of monologue the entire time. And and because we'd kind of set it up to do this, we were going to follow them back to their room. And that required a short drive in between the restaurant and the room. And because we were pretty new, we probably should have said, oh, no, thanks. It was cool having dinner with you. But I remember very clearly, we were driving over to their room, and I looked at you and I said, are you sure we want to go in a hotel room with these people? And we did anyways, which was a mistake. And so we then went into the hotel room, and we sat around there talking awkwardly for like 2 or 3 hours after that, before eventually we excused ourselves. But the last thing I remember is as we were walking out the door, the husband says to the wife, you did it again. And you always just won't shut up, and you drove them off.
Oh, then there was a time where we had the opportunity to have a couple of stay the night here, and Mark was cooking dinner, and was making a pizza, and got distracted, and the house and the pizza caught on fire, so the house was all smoky.
So almost caught the stove on fire by burning the pizza in it, and I had to quick grab the flaming pizza and like throw it outside the front door into the snow. And we've kept in touch with the wife of that couple at least. And she gives me crap about that to this day. That was like 6 years ago at this point, but yeah, I get crap about that still to this day.
Yeah, and then a couple of years later, we were at a party with them, and she was in a big hurry to play, and ran down the stairs and ended up breaking her leg because
Jeez.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Wow.
she tripped down the stairs, landed. She was leading me downstairs. She tripped down the stairs and landed very awkwardly at the bottom of the stairs and broke her leg. And then the whole party was on hold, like while the ambulance there were two guys who were paramedics or nurses in the party, and they were doing the nurse paramedic thing and taking care of her. As you can imagine, the party kind of stopped for a while this was going.
And everybody was going, well, wait a minute. Do we call the ambulance? What do we do? Do we need to put our clothes back on?
Yeah. So the moral of these stories, number one, you should have done a U-turn on your way to the hotel. Number two, you always have to have a designated pizza watchman.
Or set a timer.
Set a timer, yes. And number three, be careful on the steps. That's the main takeaways from today's episode.
Yep. I'd say that was it.
Well,
before we wrap up, I guess, do either of you have anything else that you wanted to get out there to the listeners?
I'd say I've had a pretty good time so far. So, in these adventures. So I'd encourage people to get out and keep playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess if you asked me what my big pieces of advice were, we kind of talked about this earlier. My sort of number one piece of advice is don't be in too much of a hurry to meet somebody just because they say they're interested. But the flip side of that is don't get too down if you have trouble meeting people right away, because there is an aspect of it that it's a crapshoot. That people, 80% of the messages you send out might not be responded to. And you don't know this, but it's not just you. That happens to most people.
Yeah.
And so you shouldn't get down on yourself because that happens. And I guess the only other kind of big piece of advice I would have is if you're starting out, don't have too narrow an idea of who you'd like to meet. So if you say, well, I want to meet somebody that looks exactly like us and is exactly our age and is really like us, there aren't that many people who are exactly like you out there, or exactly like your spouse. And it can be fun to meet different kinds of people. And if you give people that don't look like your ideal person at least a little bit of a chance, then you meet some cool people and you learn that you like different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a really great piece of wisdom to kind of leave on. I like that. Yeah. For sure.
And trust your gut too, because if your gut's telling you something, then 9 times out of 10, that's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If your gut is telling you that something's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
And that's when you do the U-turn.
Yes. Yeah. Get out of there.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for sharing with us, sharing your story and being vulnerable and reaching out. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was our pleasure.
And have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, stay warm.
Thanks, you too.
And we're back. Oh, I thought you were going to say it with me, but you're over here yawning instead.
Well, I was yawning quietly.
Thank you so much to Mark and Lea for coming on the show. We really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with us, as always. So thank you again. We wanted to quickly talk about our Patreon group. And first off, if you haven't been part of our Patreon before, we have the first level is that you can be part of our Q&As. We do monthly Q&As that really turn into discussions. We do 2 of them, and they're actually happening tonight. That's January 20th. If you happen to miss tonight, don't worry. There'll be one in February. You can still join. And then...
and you can listen to the recordings from all of the previous ones.
Yes, that's very true. Good point.
Thank you.
You also, at the next level, you can join our MeWe group, which is a big group chat. It's a super supportive, amazing community, if we do say so ourselves.
Yeah, humble.
But really, it's made up of all of you amazing people, and we couldn't thank you more for that. So that's super exciting. We also have men's and women's groups available as well.
Yeah, and I just, to reiterate what Emma said about it being amazing, this community has really grown over the last year, especially through COVID, and people really just looking to find support out there of people who are like them, or maybe who are wanting to learn more about what this community is like. And so, yeah, it's been a great sort of bright spot in our year that was tough. And it's definitely a highlight of our day to be part of the group chats and part of the Q&As and all of that. So just a thank you to everybody who's a part of it. And if you're interested in finding a community inside of the non-monogamous world, we'd love to have you check it out and see if it's for you.
Yes. Next week, we have an interview with Courtney, and he's actually been on our show before, Focus Fridays.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll put links to that episode in the show notes as well. But next week, he comes back and tells a little bit about his journey through non-monogamy.
He is also the founder of a nonprofit called Something Positive for Positive People, which is a podcast and way more than a podcast.
It's amazing.
Especially now. So definitely check that out. Again, links are in the show notes. It's a fantastic resource for anybody who's sort of facing the stigma or facing the diagnosis of an STI. So definitely check that out and throw some support his way if you can. It would mean a lot to us, and we know it would mean a lot to him.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's it.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's all we've got. That's all that's on your notepad. So I think we did it.
I think we're good. Okay, bye everyone. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.